Welcome, everybody. Welcome to our Realbird hands-on workshop. We're together a couple times a month to help you use the best tools in the real estate marketing industry to help you be successful, to attract buyers, to attract sellers, and to be able to meet the needs of those buyers and sellers, leveraging this tool in so many different ways. Realbird's been around for quite a while, and I could definitely say that Janie Coffey has been the top agent that's really leveraged what Realbird's about and using the tools in the best ways possible. And not only tools, but the concept of gathering information to show you as the agent to be connected to for listings, for buyers. And Janie's really taken the tool out of the toolbox and really put it to work. And she's continuing her tradition on coming back every once in a while and sharing with us what she learned about applying these principles that Realbird supports and helping market you and your listings. So she was here a year ago, and she's back to show. A year ago, she actually left the North Miami marketplace and started fresh, kind of rooted up, pulled everything up, and made stakes up to more northern part of the state in Florida and Jacksonville, and started kind of from ground zero, and really just taking the tools and her knowledge of the real estate industry and how to take care of clients' needs. And she was able to build some business very quickly. And she's back a year later from that last webinar we had her share at, and to share what she's learned since then. And we're going to be able to learn some things that you can apply in your marketplace. Janie's always been great at sharing principal marketing, real estate marketing tips that will work in any market. She's happened to apply them in two different markets that she's sharing again now with us what's going to work and what's worked for her. And we're glad to have you, Janie. Thanks for being here today and sharing. We have hungry agents out there that are needing help, the clarity to where to put their efforts, where to put their energy and their tools and their focus. So thanks for being here, Janie. I'm going to pass over the screen to you so you can share. If I do that wrong, it looks like okay. Looks like I'm going to do this here.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I believe the screen is yours. The presentation baton has been passed.
Great. So first of all, thank you guys so much, Eric and Gabe and Zoltan. You guys have been so wonderful to me over all the years. So I'm delighted to be here and share hopefully what is some inspiration to fellow agents. That's kind of my biggest thing, is I want to show agents what's possible with real estate. And my story and now my team's story, I think, is especially hopefully motivating, because like you were saying, I just started fresh in a brand new market. I started in September 2015, so I calculate we're about 20 months in from scratch. And it was exactly a year ago this month that I did my presentation to you all with what I had done leveraging Expires. And so now that was, at that time I had listed about 14 million in properties. Now I'm up to about 48 million listing, almost exclusively from Expires. But then things that have branched off from that, from building a team, has added to that. Referrals from successful closings has added to that. Referrals from you all out there has added to that. So I just wanted to go in. Last year was not an easy year. It was my first year in a brand new market. I really went all in, and I learned a lot of lessons. So one thing I'd like to share today is I'm going to do a mini condensed version of how I got started in the Expireds, because I think that was what's so successful. But then I really want to build upon that, like lessons learned, so that anybody doing something similar might be able to learn from that. Eric, I won't be able to see the chat box because they have this full screen. So please feel free to interrupt me and ask questions along the way if people have questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, cool. So like I said, it's been less than 2 years. We definitely are just almost at 50 million in listings. That's listed and or sold combined. But from a cold start, I think that's pretty darn good. And like I said, I've done this presentation before, so I'm going to kind of go through it quickly, but for the people who haven't seen it, I do want them to know what is possible. Started in September of 2015, I didn't know a person, and I just started mailing to expireds. I was going through the expireds every single day, and I was mailing. And I'll get into what I was mailing today. Started hosting open houses for fellow agents' listings. I didn't have any business of my own. Went all the way till November, so a good full 2 months, maybe 2.5 months before I got even my first call. And I still hardly had any business September, October, November, December, so 4 months in. It should be said I was really focused on luxury listings. So I don't want people to get discouraged if they service a different price point. Lower price points can make you just as much money as luxury business. They do turn over faster, so I don't want people to get super discouraged when I say it took a little bit of time to get traction. But once I did get traction, it took off like a Japanese fast train. It just went crazy. So September through 16, hardly got anything. By early January, February of last year, 2016, just things started to like blow up as far as getting calls, listings, things like that, all almost exclusively from expireds. So this is just a very small snapshot of some of the listings we picked up, but it really was pretty phenomenal. The calls we were getting, the response we were getting, sometimes picking up some of the best listings in the market. Again, almost all from expireds. And as a side note, if any of you were on the webinar last year that I did with Realbird about expireds, I was sitting in a listing. I don't know if you guys remember. I was sitting in a listing that I had gotten from expireds, going through an inspection because it was already under contract. And as soon as I finished the webinar with Realbird and left, I had holed myself up in the office of this home. I got a call, and the call was from the owner of this house right here, which is called the Old Mansion in St. Augustine. It's from the 1870s, and she was responding to one of my expireds. I was literally walking out of listing, walking out of the webinar a year ago, and she wanted me to come over, but she did not want to list. She was pretty adamant she didn't want to list. She didn't want pictures of her listing on the internet. She had owned this house for over 30 years. But fast forward a year, so it's almost complete circle. I closed just this week. I ended up having both sides. Both clients are very, very happy. So when I was putting this webinar 1 year later recap, I thought, well, that's just perfect that the listing that I got leaving last year's webinar, I'm closing this year. But the learning thing of that is when I meant to meet with her, I could have gotten discouraged when she said she absolutely didn't want to list. But I didn't. I went and met with her. I spent some time speaking with her, trying to understand really what she wanted and what she needed, which was to sell her house. And when she was saying she didn't want to list, it was other concerns. I was able to talk her through those concerns, explain to her why it's important to be on the internet, to have good pictures and things like that. So I just wrote this, try to understand their needs, not just what they say, find out what's really behind that, like what they're saying. Because a lot of times what they're saying, maybe they don't understand the real estate business or they're not totally clear on what they want. But if you really understand where they're trying to get versus what they're saying, sometimes that can really help you find a happy solution for everybody. And I made really great friends with the buyers of this property and, of course, with her, and helped her move on to the next chapter of her life. So I just wanted to show you guys as a little inspiration what me and now my team, I've really developed a team mid-year last year. I didn't have one last year when we started, but business started to grow so much that we have developed a team. So I just want to show you what we've done in this past year since we had that webinar with you guys. We've listed 45 million. Actually, I did it this morning. It's 48 million. I want to point out, I personally stopped prospecting for expires May of last year because business was so busy and I had got so many listings. I did not have a team on board. I didn't have admin on board. So I had to stop prospecting because I wanted to keep up the high level of service to my sellers. So that number of listed 48 or 45, 50 million, that's with no active prospecting on my part in the past year. Just now, I'm starting to get back on board with prospecting because finally we have things in place with teams and admin and systems and things like that. So it could actually be way, way, way more had I not stopped. Pended and sold over 20, so of the 45, in the past 12 months, 20 million is either been closed sales or it's pending to close in the next few months. Average list price right now for our team is 1.7 million in a market where the average sale is 185,000. So like I said, a lot of this is kind of geared towards luxury because that's what I do. You can make just as much money selling the $185,000 properties as you can selling the larger ones for various reasons. Any numbers I quote you is just because it's what I know with the luxury market. Takes a little longer to get them, takes a little longer to sell them. A lot more expires. So there's money to be made in all different price points. But we did list the highest listing in Duval County. That's my county at the time of the listing. A new one's come on since then that's higher, but that was a pretty big deal when we did that, especially considering that we're new to the area. This year, I closed the first $3 million property in Ponte Vedra Beach, which is our kind of super high-end area in all of 2017. I closed that in March, and the second highest in the MLS. Since then, because that was 2 months ago, things higher have closed, but that was pretty impressive to have the highest in the first 3 months of the year. We've listed several properties that fellow agents had been trying to get and were not able to secure. Often we're the second, third, or even fourth agent on a listing. And that's not just listing them, but closing them too. And I get a little bit into that as well. There's a lot of reasons why properties don't sell the first or second go round. Some people get shied off of expired saying, well, there's a reason they expired. Well, as professionals, it's our job to kind of do an analysis of why it didn't sell and make the suggestion to the seller of what's going to make the difference. Is it staging it? Is it a price strategy? Is it how it's promoted? Who the target audience is, buyers? And a lot of times motivations change with people over time. So I wouldn't get discouraged about expireds because somebody can say they're not motivated and 2 or 3 months later, their motivation totally changes. And that's happened quite a bit on my listings. So just keep those things in mind. Currently, our team has about 20% of the listings of our brokerage, and our brokerage is made up of 3 offices. Again, most of this is built from expireds and then building our team out. And right now, our team has pended or closed almost just shy of 400,000 GCI in 2017. Depending on your market, that might be a small number, that might be a big number. For our market, it's pretty good. And right now, our team is, and I'll talk more about it later, me, one other full-time agent, and one full-time administrative person. We are going to be bringing on another full-time agent, and we're going to be bringing on a part-time marketing, graphic, social media person. I'm going to go through this quickly. I don't want to kill the time going over this, but this is some data that I got with expired listings that I used coming up. If you missed the webinar last year and you want to see very, very detailed about how I built the expired program, you can go to Realbird's blog, and they have it on there. And then I just have a short link to it called Janie, Janie, Expireds, expireds.info, which will just point you to that Realbird link. It's about 90 minutes. But if you missed it and you are interested in building out expireds, I think it's probably pretty useful. What I found out here and why I went after expireds when I first moved here, I didn't want to spend a lot of money to buy buyer leads like Zillow and things like that. I really didn't have the time to go network and develop my own sphere of influence because that takes a long time. I didn't have the money to do direct mailing. And so I went after expireds because they're the lowest hanging fruit, because these are sellers who've already raised their hand up and said that they want to sell. And that doesn't always mean it expired yesterday. I also went after ones that expired 6 months ago, a year ago, things like that. But people who have already basically shown that they're interested in selling. What I found out was 60% of them expired, and when they relisted, they normally did relist with their same agent. 40% relisted with a new agent. The ones who relisted with their same agent, on average, relisted after 23 days off the market, but the median was only 2, meaning for the most part, they weren't taking a break on the listing. The agent just forgot to extend the listing or something like that. So normally they came back on market very quickly. But there was ones they took it off. Maybe it was on the holidays or something like that. But it was a much kind of smaller gap from when they relisted if they were relisting with the same agent. Understandably, the ones that they relisted with a new agent took longer, more like a month and a half. That's because they were taking time to regroup. They were probably frustrated that their listing expired at all because they weren't able to move on. And now they had to regroup and interview new agents and figure out what they're going to do. I don't mind these because even if they were only expired for a day or two, it at least got me the opportunity to get my first package mailed off to them, which has worked out really great because a lot of times, even if they relisted with their original agent, maybe another 3 months, another 6 months, if it didn't sell, they held on to my package, and I ended up picking up several listings where I only sent them that first package. They relisted, it didn't sell, and then they called me 3-6 months later. These are the ones that I spent the most time and the most effort and the most money on. I really tracked everything very, very well. The percentage of people contacting me if I entered them into my system was about 13%. It's actually gone up. It's probably more like 15 or 20% who contacted me from the ones that I entered into the whole system. But the ones who did contact me, they always said the same thing. I called you because you were so persistent. And then they would say, everyone mailed or called for a while, but after some time, they all went away and you never did, meaning me or our team. We just stayed with it. Pretty much across the board, the ones who did contact me, it was broken up evenly, a third, a third, a third. A third were calling to say thank you so much, but it's either sold and the agent forgot to close it out, or they're relisting with the same agent or something like that. They were nice, but we weren't going anywhere with that. Another third called and said, hey, can you come over? I really want to talk to you and find out about listing. And then the final third said, we're not doing anything right now, but I'm going to keep your information and be in touch with you if and when I'm ready to list. Only two this whole time have contacted me and said, please don't mail me anything anymore. I either have, I love my agent, I'm going to stick with them. And nobody has been not nice or rude or anything like that. 5%, it's probably a little higher than that, but 5% have that I entered into my system have listed with me. I think it's probably going to grow from there, and I'll go over that in a little bit, why I think that is. One thing that people ask me all the time when they hear the success I've had with Expires is, can you share your best letter with me? I think almost without exception, I could probably be mailing them like nonsense. I don't think it's what's in the letter. Okay, that's probably 25% of it, but really 75% of it is the persistence and the follow-up and the confidence, of course, when I go on the listing presentation. But what wins the deal is just the ongoing sending, and sending things of value. But more than anything else, if you are only sending 5 letters or 2 phone calls or something like that, it's not what gets it. Here's that link if you're interested to look up a little bit more detail. When I say it's the long-term sending, I really tracked it. Very few contacted me after the first letter or first postcard or first package. And if they did, almost without fail, with the exception of only one person, were they calling to say, hey, I'm relisting with my same agent, or it's sold. Thank you so much. So very, very few contacted me after the first. On average, this is the average, they contacted me after almost 15 touch points, meaning package, postcard, letter, call, slide out, email, something like that. 15 touch points. I think this is, if you only have one takeaway from the entire webinar today, it's that it took 15 touch points for them to contact me. And most people, most agents, they give up after 5 or they give up after 10. If they do, 10, they think they've done a lot and they think it's exhausted. Well, if I had done that and given up like that, I wouldn't have had any of the business that I have right now, because on average it was the 14, almost 15 times. If they contacted me at this point, they said they were intrigued, they wanted to learn more, but they might still be talking to somebody. The ones who contacted me after the longer times, meaning I've sent them 30 or 40 different things between letters, postcards, emails. They just said, come on over and list my house. They didn't even interview me. They didn't want to find out what I had to offer. They knew what I had to offer because I send them so many things. So that's why I point out it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. I hear a question, Elaine.
Janie, we have a question. What CRM are you using?
Okay, I'm going to go into that. I've done almost all of this in Top Producer. But the one thing that came out of the webinar last year was so many people wanted to get my system, buy my system, cajole my system. Like they just wanted it. There was no way for me to get this information easily to anybody else to use because it was such a combination of things that I had kind of hodgepodged it in there. I actually have partnered up with a CRM called Seize the Market, who is going to have this available to them because they have the technology to do it. So if you're an individual agent, you can certainly do this in Top Producer. It's the only CRM that I found that was robust enough to keep everything organized with emails, letters, postcards, things like that. Seize the Market is a CRM really geared towards teams. So if you have a team, you might want to look into Seize the Market. And I'll go a teeny bit over that in a minute, but you definitely need a CRM that's very, very robust, or you'd never be able to stay on top of all of this. Because it's a lot, but it's clearly paying off and it's worth it. And when I look into what I'm spending or have been spending, which was roughly $800 a month, that would cover putting about 50 new properties into my system every month. That was covering the cost of Vulcan 7, the cost of Rebec. I have 2 expired systems because we have more than one MLS in my area. That included the postage, materials, things like that. It's by far the most cost effective that I've found to get listings compared to direct mail or
Janie, we have a question that is a little bit interesting. Eric wants to know, you said that it takes 15 touch points before people respond. How long does that usually take? Do you have some measure for that?
Yeah, so I would say, because my whole system, which is about, I think, 45 or so touch points, is about 3 months. So the 15 touch points is probably the first 4 to 5 weeks from when they expire. Some of them is a little faster, some of them is a little longer, but as you saw before, at least in my market, they were relisting, if they're going to relist with a new agent, about 43 days. So by then, of course, they had chosen. So probably a month after it expired. It might be a little different in your market. These are all numbers specific to my market and the properties I was going after. But maybe that answers your question. But I would not be shy at all about going after listings that expired 3 months, 6 months ago, because the one good thing about them is you don't have that crazy competition you have when a property first expires. They're getting kind of barraged by calls and things like that. A month, 2 months, 6 months later, everything's died down and they might be a little more open to relisting, especially if you have exciting news to tell them that the market is better now than when they were on the market, things like that. The first day is your most important day because that's when you make your first impression. I have a packet, like a 14-page packet that I actually bind and send to them. And I get a lot of calls from that. Even I've gotten calls from sellers who say, I'm going to relist with my current agent, or I've already picked somebody out, or I'm taking my house off the market for a while, but they call to tell me how much they like my packet. I actually got a call yesterday from somebody who said that they were really impressed with that. That's a $1.9 million listing, and they're taking some time off to take care of some repairs, but they're going to be putting their house back on the market in August, so I'm going to meet with them. So the first day is really important. Let you send them the first day, and you might only get 1 day, because if they relist, you don't get another opportunity unless it expires again. This is what the package looks like. This is a bound little thing. I use a system called CoverBind. Right here. I found, because the cover bind system, you buy these little covers and they have like a glue strip in the back because that spiral binding doesn't look very nice. So this actually is a heat thing and it glues it on the back and it's custom to them, to the homeowners. If you go on eBay and look for cover bind, you can normally find one of the binding machines for like $100, $200. And I point that out because brand new, they're $500 to $1,000. I now have 3 of them, or I have 2, and my other team member has 1 because we have them at different places and one has them at home so that we can bind and get things out that day. And you can buy these covers too. Then we put them in a large navy blue envelope to go with our branding. We hand address them with silver ink, and we always use real stamps. It's about $2 to send out the first package. And then I have alternating letters and postcards. The postcards are from Sotheby's system, but you could use, of course, any postcard. So I'm always keeping a stock of a series of 5 or 6 postcards in my office, and they're numbered in my system, 1 through 5, 1 through 6, 1 through 7. So I know exactly when. And then I just take them off the shelf, address them, put a stamp on them, and send them out. My whole system takes me an hour, hour and a half every morning to process. And that's just my prospecting time that I've put off to the side. So it's not something that's going to happen overnight, and it's not something that takes very little time. It is an investment in time and money, but as you saw, it's well worth it. And then I have different emails that I've written to them as well, where I've talked about different things. People say, where do you get the emails? I use Vulcan 7, which is an expired processing system where it gets you that data. But a lot of times, I'll have to go to Google, I go to Spokio, I go to LinkedIn, I go to Facebook. I try to find emails every possible way. If I figure out where they work, I'll go to their work website and see if I can find their email there. But finding the emails has been really, really useful.
Janie, there's a question from Betty. Was the packet created in Top Producer?
The packet is in, I use Mac, so I use Pages, which I guess is, what is that, like PowerPoint or Word, I guess. So that's not in Top Producer. That's something that's just on my computer, on my hard drive. And I change out the homeowner's name on the main page before binding it every day. And then I write a little handwritten note and put my business card and the little handwritten note in there. So my system, what it looks like I said, it has over 40 touch points. I really need to build that out to 50 or 60 touch points, but they get a package the day it expires. Well, they get it the next day because it goes in the mail the day it expires. And then I do alternating letters and postcards, a letter, a postcard, a letter, and postcard every day for the first 2 weeks. So it's a lot. And then every 3 days after that, and then every 7 days, and then every 21 days. Once they've gone through this whole thing, then they also get put into the just listed, just sold, and now case studies, because I have case studies to send them of the expireds that I listed, where I basically go over, okay, here's my analysis of what happened when I met with this expired seller. Here's what I suggested. Here's what we did, and here's the results. If I can find their email, they go into the email system as well. And then I do use the market snapshot from Top Producer, where it sends them every 2 weeks, like a value of what's going on in their market. I've definitely gotten calls from that as well. So what do you say in the letters? Talk a lot about their pain. They haven't been able to move on to their next chapter of their lives. Everybody puts their house on the market. They think it's going to sell. Nobody at all plans that they're going to be expired off the market in 6 months or 12 months. So I kind of highlight, I understand it's very frustrating. You're not able to move on to the next chapter in your life. Also, a lot of people get frustrated because they're having to keep their house show ready all the time. And we forget about that as agents, that when somebody's house is on the market, they're not living the way they normally live. Even very neat, clean people are not living the way they normally live when their house is on the market because they're having to keep it show ready. And then they might have lost an opportunity. Maybe there was another house. Maybe there was a job, something like that. So I talk a lot about understanding that. And I talk about understanding their frustration. A lot of them feel that their previous agent didn't really take a lot of action to market and sell their house. A lot of people feel that they had very, very poor communication with their past agent, especially if their agent didn't tell them that their house was about to expire. And what that means, meaning they're going to get a ton of calls. They're even more angry. A lot of them feel that there was no real good marketing done by their past agent, and nobody was keeping them up to date with what's going on in the market. If you have a 6, 9, or 12-month listing and it hasn't sold, the market's probably shifted. And they are not understanding. They think it's the same market that they had a year ago when they came on the market. And that's especially important these next couple years, because I think we are in a shifting market. And it's our job as real estate professionals to be explaining that to our sellers. Otherwise, they don't understand what's going on. They just think, what's wrong with my house or what's wrong with my agent? Then we talk about the solution. What do we do differently? We share with them the marketing plan. We share with them the communication plan. We talk about what's different about our brokerage and ourselves. And by the way, they are pretty much angry. If you deal with expired listings, you're dealing with often kind of the angriest group of real estate people out there. You have to be able to deal with that and empathize with them and be compassionate with them. I have found that the angrier they are or the tougher they are, if you do win them over, they typically tend to be kind of the best ones to work with.
We have another question from Maggie. I'm not sure I understand this. How long are the 3 days, 7 days, 21 day cycles?
So for the first 2 weeks, they're getting something every day. For the this is probably then every 3 days, probably another 2 to 3 weeks where they're getting something every 3 days, and then every 7 days, that's going to be at least another 3 or 4 weeks, and then every 21 days, then it really, then they just go into the just listed, just sold. So it's building out, knowing that the first 30 days is really the hottest time if they're going to relist. Then I slowly tamper it back, because then I just want to stay in front of them, but not at the same pace as the beginning. Give them real examples of what you will do. So of course, I always talk about the Realbird websites. I don't just get a Realbird website. I always buy the domain name, like from GoDaddy. I get this is 4004 Cordova Ave.info. You can get for $2.99 a URL. Also, it's available through Realbird to get URLs. I always use the text code that Realbird provides us, and I use that everywhere. I make little teeny mini business card sized business cards for each listing, and I put the text code on there. I make a sign writer, and I put the text code on there. And I show the sellers how having this individual website is really useful to promoting their property. Especially, you can embed the videos in there. You can do all kinds of stuff. They love the website, and they love that it's a very easy thing. And I share with them that this is keeping people on their listing, not like if they're going to Zillow or Realtor, where they might just pop off and start looking at other listings and meander down, surfing properties. By really promoting the single listing websites that we get through Realbird, they love it, and they love the text code, because you can capture the information. When people talk to me about wanting to put flyer boxes out, I say absolutely not. I only have one right now that has a flyer box because she would not let it go. But we don't want flyer boxes out there, because if a buyer goes by, grabs a flyer, you never know they were there. You're never able to talk to them. If you provide a text code, they normally will text something before they'll actually call an agent. They get all the information on their phone. It looks really great. And then you have their phone number, and you can call or text them immediately after. And Gabe, you guys now have also a service where you can find out a little bit about them from their texting, I believe, where it kind of like reverse gives you data on the people. So I talk about what we do differently. Talk about we do open houses, what web exposure we provide, what network we have, et cetera, et cetera. And so your things of value are going to maybe be a little different than mine, but you really have to set yourself apart from whomever had it listed before.
Lisa has a question. After the 21-day cycle, if they don't list, what do you do?
They just go into the just listed, just sold postcards and emails. So they're still going to get something from me.
And Patricia is asking, what are the links on the left side of the single property website? I guess I can answer that. Those are
Yeah.
links that some of them are automatic when you create a website, like the map, and then the features you can enter, and then you can customize it with various information like neighborhood and add videos and something about yourself. There's a whole methodology here, and at this point, I should really, because there's so many people online, I should tell you that there's two things that you need to achieve to generate a lead. The first one, and to have in general a growing business from online leads. One is you have to extend your footprint online so that people can find you easier and easier as you put in money and time into your marketing. And the second is that you want to have people call you when they see something from you. And that's a brand communication issue. And we have, if anybody's interested, you can call me and I can go into details. I don't want to take the time now.
Okay. This is, I say it all the time. If I could only have two things to build my business, besides the MLS, it would simply be Realbird and some access to the expired systems. I could build a business anywhere now. Like, I know how to do it. I could go anywhere and build it. And I did learn some big lessons last year. I'm almost to the point where I'm going to share those lessons because I think those are important to know too.
Jerome is asking, how often do you check? Are you checking to see if they have relisted?
Every day. I use Vulcan 7 and Rebec. Those are two different expired systems that you can subscribe to. Rebec is around $50 a month. Vulcan 7 is a lot more. It's like $250, $300 a month. But they also come up with, there's a separate list of who's relisted. And so as soon as we put the properties in the system each morning of the new expired ones, we check the relisted one. And if they've relisted, we take the activities off. We don't continue to follow up with them. We do keep them, though, in a separate system where we know we've mailed to them in the past, so they can still get our just listed, just sold, market report, stuff like that, but they will no longer get stuff targeted to them specifically about listing with us. But yeah, we check that every day. You have to, because you're not supposed to contact them anymore once they relist with you or anybody, with anybody else. This is just an example of my system in Top Producer, where it kind of shows the whole cascading thing of to-dos or postcards, emails, letters, all kind of stuff, calls, slide dials, all of that's in here. It took me a while to come up with this system. It took actually a long time to come up with this system and all this, but it works really, really well. So I just wanted you guys to see, if you will not be able to pull off a system like this if you don't have a system in place to manage it. Absolutely no way. You would pull your hair out.
There's a question from Elaine, and I think the answer is yes here. Couldn't we just pull the expireds from the MLS versus pay Rebec?
Yes, you can absolutely do that, but I'll tell you why that's going to drive you insane. It's once you do that, if you're not having it easily, getting the information easily in front of you, meaning mailing address of the owner, because a lot of times they don't live there, email or phone numbers of the owner, then you're going to have to be going back every day and try to figure out, did they relist or not? It would become a logistics nightmare within a week. Like, I just can't even imagine trying to approach, because every day in my area, there's probably 10 to 20 new expireds in the areas that I'm interested in, that I'm having to go through and look at and sort and things like that. And then I have all the information right in Rebec and Vulcan with the owner's mailing information, the owner's possibly email, phone. And like I said, it's telling me every day what's relisted. If I were trying to do that on my own, just using the MLS, there's no way. I wouldn't do it. I think it would drive you insane.
Jimmy's asking, how many expired listing does it take for you to get one listing?
Well, like I said, more than 5% that I've put in my system have actually listed with me now. I think it's going to go up from here. So you can do the math. I mean, if I put 100 in my system and tracked them, I'd end up probably with 5 listings. And the reason I say 100, remember, once I put them in the system, 60% of them are not, they're going to list with their existing agent. So I stopped doing all those activities. So then I'm already down to 40 potential. And then probably of those 40 potential, half of them are probably not going to relist right now at all. So they just keep getting things and keep getting things. And that brings it down to, 20. And then some are going to call me and some aren't going to call me. Probably half are going to call me and half are not. So that's a pretty good, but that's after you're going a little bit. It takes 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months to kind of get your system down and everything going.
And Jim
Mhm.
also is asking if do you know anything about something land voice
Yeah,
for
land voice is
expired?
one too. The Cadillac of all of them is Vulcan 7 for sure. I have not. Vulcan 7 only makes X amount of users available in a certain area. They kind of what's the word? Limit the number of people who can get their data in an area. So you would have to call Vulcan 7 and see if they have it there. I looked into all the different ones. I got Vulcan 7 because it is the best one. It has the best data. What's really important is who has the most accurate data, meaning phone numbers and emails. The reason I have Rebec also is, like I said, there's actually 3 different boards in the area I belong to. And I found that Vulcan 7 wasn't, for whatever reason, picking up the listings on all the 3 different boards. So now between the 2, it's a little more complicated than most people have to go through. But yes,
Betty
land
says
voice is
that
one.
she thinks that you have skipped the slide showing the companies that you're using. Did you?
Oh yeah, you're right. Thank you. Let's go back to that. You guys are quick. Okay, so like I said, I'm transitioning from top producer to Seize the Market as my main hub. Seize the Market is really for teams. It's not. It's going to be too costly for individual agents. But if you have a team, you might really want to look into it. I use Vulcan and Rebec as my 2 expired data resources. I use Spokio as a second level resource to try to get data, phone numbers, email addresses. I'm a big friend of the people at the post office because I'm always going over there and buying stamps. I think it's important to say everything is hand addressed from us. Everything is with a real stamp from us. And I don't buy just those standard red and blue flag stamps. I always go to the post office and ask what's new and what's different because I'm wanting my stuff to look different and unique and individual and personalized each time. So sometimes I use different envelope colors, different ink colors, different stamps, but they're always hand addressed. That's why it takes a while. But I found it really makes a difference. I use slide dial because I, believe it or not, don't love talking to people on the phone. So I'll use slide dial and leave them a message to follow up, make sure they got my package. A couple members on my team do call, and they're actually getting good success with calling. And I'll get into that in a minute. And then I use Express Stocks. That's the system from Sotheby's for printed postcards and stuff like that. But there's a lot of postcard systems out there, Merrill, Express Stocks, other ones like that. And then having a great admin, like a really good admin who loves admin, is extremely important to keep this going. So thanks for pointing that out. So how important is
Stephen has a question here. If somebody's getting started, would it be functionable to only subscribe to Redex?
Yeah, and you might only need Rebec, especially if you have a limited budget. You're going to have to put in a little bit more time because with Rebec you don't get emails. So if you're wanting to do something with emails, anytime I get somebody straight from Rebec, I have to go find an email somewhere using Spokio or something like that. So how important is brand? The more the higher end properties you're wanting to go after, like what I go after, the luxury properties, brand becomes really, really, really important. The more bread and butter properties, it's not nearly as important. What about price? I'm actually going to go over that a second, and geographic area in my lessons learned section now. How far back do I search expires? I would go back even 2 years, 3 years. And should I ever give up? No, never give up. Never stop. Never, ever stop unless you find out that they sold. Or they call and tell you don't contact them again. But like I said, that just barely ever happens. What about calling? For the high end, I would call less. For the mid price point or the lower price point, I would call more. The reason is the people at the high end, they respond more in their own time by coming to you based on what you've sent them, and they don't respond as well on the phone. For the mid price and lower price point, they're getting called and things so much that if you're not calling, you're going to get passed over. They're going to relist and sell before you can ever contact them. So depending on your price point, it'll determine how much and how often you call. Like I said, I like Slide Dial. It allows you to leave a message on their phone without having to have it call through. I definitely suggest calling older expires. They're not angry anymore if it's 6 months ago, and they'll have a conversation with you. Don't discuss price or commission on the phone. That's like one of the things they always want to know. Just get the appointment. Get off the phone if you do get them on the phone. Don't have this long, lengthy conversation. Just be nice, set an appointment and get over there, see the house, see the people, meet with them, show them what you have to use. Try using a dialer. My best friend, Shelley Northern, she uses Mojo, which has a triple dialer, which means it's constantly calling numbers, and the minute one answers, she's on the phone with them. I personally would have a hard time using a dialer. I don't think my brain functions that fast, but a lot of people do use dialers, and they're very, very successful with it. Vulcan has one. Rebec has one, I think, you can add to the system. And then, like I said, Mojo is kind of considered one of the best of the dialers.
Jenny, we have 2 more questions, if you don't mind. One is Patricia's asking, how accurate are the emails in the Spokane area?
I don't think there's any one perfect source out there. So sometimes the first email that I use goes through. Sometimes I've got to search and find 3 or 4 emails before I find one that goes through. And sometimes I don't find any email. I just have become very good at being like an internet detective. But I use Spokane a lot. I use it daily. Actually, I'm pretty happy with it.
And Lisa wants to know, how do you handle email when they haven't subscribed yet?
You know what? For like the spam thing, nobody's ever said. I've had people unsubscribe, but nobody's complained or given me a hard time. That's a call somebody would have to make on their own, just like calling. I haven't had a problem with it. You guys have to make your own decision with that. So everything I've talked to up until now is stuff that I was doing basically religiously, and stuff that I'm adding in now is actually more calling. One reason is now I'm going back to calling ones that I had mailed maybe a year ago. I'm also implementing getting some lower price point properties in to kind of balance out my inventory, and I'm going to go into that in a minute. Now that I have enough success stories, which just listed, just sold case studies, I'm starting to direct mail to the ones that I'm still going after that maybe haven't relisted for several months. Postagram is a really cool little app where you can send postcards to the people's houses. I've done some hand delivering of packages, and I actually got sticky notes and door hangers from Vistaprint with our team logo on it with different messages like sticky notes. I have a whole series of 5 different sticky notes to leave on people's doors saying, would you like a CMA? Would you like to have an appointment? It's cute. So just started doing that a few months ago. What would I tell myself?
Maggie has a question that I believe spam emails are only applicable when you're sending mass emails, which isn't the case.
I think so too. Right. I think so too. Like I said, I've had nobody complain about that. And these clearly aren't mass emails.
And Lisa,
what would I tell them?
Sorry, Lisa is asking advantages of sending them to Realbird page when they text versus sending them to your own website landing page.
Well, that is a marketing. To have a single listing website for your listing is a marketing tool to show your seller. I have this website just for your property, 123smithstreet.com or .info. That's a marketing tool as opposed to generic branding yourself as an agent. It's a tool to market the listing. So now I just want to get into kind of briefly, like, what have I learned the last 20 months? Because I've actually learned a heck of a lot. I went all in. 20 months ago when I started, I was in a brand new market. I didn't know a soul. I only had X amount of dollars saved up. I didn't know anything here. I didn't know the market, nothing. And I went all in. Like when they talk about burn your bridges, like I burned my bridges. Like I spent every dollar I had, completely put my social life on hold, put my health and fitness pretty much on hold. So now looking back, there are some things I would do differently with the experience that I've had. So I want to share that. I would definitely diversify price points a little bit. I went exclusively after luxury listings. And now 20 months fast forward, that's really turning out great because they're selling. But a lot of them, even though they had been expired listings, they still took a year to sell. So I would definitely diversify price points and have at least, if you're looking at doing luxury, depending on if you're focused solely on that or not, I would have, just like you diversify your portfolio with low, middle, and high risk stocks or investments, I would do the same thing. I would have a certain amount lower end that turn faster, a certain amount mid price, and a certain amount high price. You've got to be totally organized and systematized. Don't keep trying to add more things until you've got your system down pat. I did the reverse of this. I added team members before I added my administrative person, just the way things developed. I would definitely have a full-time admin before I thought about adding any team members. And make sure your admin loves to be an admin. You don't want to be hiring people as your admin who either secretly or openly want to be an agent, because you're going to spend a lot of time, you're going to slow yourself down and spend a lot of time training a person to be an admin. They're going to learn your systems, they're going to learn how to do business, and they're going to go off and be an agent. So make sure that that's the person who wants to be in the office doing administrative stuff. Definitely do not give up. I just can't implement. By the way, how pretty is this listing? This just turned 100 years old this year, and this is a very hard listing to get. A lot of people told me they tried to get it, and I was able to get that, so I'm pretty proud of that one. I think it's important to build a team. You don't have to build a big team, but you can only do so much by yourself. When you start adding things in, like an admin, and getting your administration and systems in place, that's when you can really start to leverage yourself. I create so many leads from my system and the things that spin off from that system that if I didn't build a team out, I would be leaving so much money on the table, because people can only do so much as a single agent. And then once you get your admin in place, then get your sales team in place of a few other like-minded agents to share in that with you, where you've got, whether I go after one expired or 200 expireds in a month, a lot of my expenses are the same. Vulcan is the same, Rebec is the same, Seeds of Market or top producer. So why not partner up with other people to kind of take on the other areas that you're not going after? You can only do so much on your own. Definitely have a clear vision of where you want to go and communicate that with all your team members. What I would do over. These are really important. Since I did not know the area right here in Northeast, I just mailed, or I put anybody in my system if they were a pretty property. That was kind of my standard if I wanted to go after them. That's great if they're in a hot market. But now, fast forward 20 months, a lot of them were over here in like a cool or cold market. So even though I got the listing, it was really hard to sell because there just wasn't enough buyers for that area, even though it was beautiful and even if it was priced right and they were really nice sellers. It's hard to sell those in a cool market. So now I have identified which areas are hot in the area that I live, and I only go after those that are warm or hot. I would definitely not spend my time and money going after even the most beautiful listings in a cold areas. And you can get this from, by the way, from Zillow. There's a lot of things I don't like about Zillow, but the market temp I think is a really good thing. And you get that by you just type in a zip code and then you go into like neighborhood information on Zillow and it'll share with you the temperature from completely cold to completely hot, and try to at least go from this area forward. Like I said, now I'm implementing a third of my listing inventory. So if I have 21 listings, I want 7 of them to be kind of bread and butter listings, the ones that you know you're only going to have listed 30, 60, 90 days tops, and they're going to sell. That would have helped me last year a lot had I had some fast sale properties. They take less time to market. They take less time to get under contract. They take less money to market. And you can build up enough with a third. You can kind of have your monthly expenses covered and then focus on the luxury stuff. This is another thing I did not do. I just looked at in the beginning, well, for most of the time, I just looked at the address, the main picture, and I never looked at the pictures inside the listings. There's a lot of listings when I went on the listing appointment. I mean, none of them were this bad. But had I spent the extra 5 or 10 minutes every morning looking at the pictures of the previous listing, there's quite a few I would not have spent my time and money to get an appointment with, because once I got the appointment, it was just not a listing I personally wanted for whatever reason. So I would definitely suggest spending a few more minutes looking at each listing you're going to put into your system, because putting it in your system right there, you're committing a good amount of your time and money if it goes all the way through. And then also getting a niche, whether it's a geographical niche or a property type niche. Like I've kind of really niched myself into unusual, different historic properties or properties of cultural architectural significance. But having a niche or a farm area is really going to help you rather than scattering yourself too thin. These are all things I learned the last year or ingrained last year that I wish I had known a little more. So the real magic is have a buddy. Trying to do this by yourself without a support person is going to be really hard. I spend time every single morning visualizing how I want my business to be in a year, 2 years, 5 years from now. I highly suggest visualization. You've got to be confident when you go on these listing appointments. Don't listen to others. There's so many naysayers out there, and there's so many haters out there, and there's so many people that you're doing something different. They'll say, oh, expires don't work, or whatever it is, whatever you're going for. If you know in your heart it's going to work and you go through with it, it will work. You've got to be patient with expires. Like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And the consistency and persistence is what pays off, not any special message or letter or anything like that. So with that, totally open to questions. I guess I'll stop sharing my screen so that I can see that question sidebar.
So we're at Hillary, who says, do you create your letter and postcard contents from scratch, or do you borrow contents from other sources, borrow in quotes?
So I would say all of the above. Barino has a really great expired system. I've been following him for a long time. The guys from Paperless Agents have a great expired system. So, and then of course, a lot has to be custom to me and my market and my brokerage and my background. So if you get top producer, there's letters in there for expireds. So it's a complete mixture of all of the above.
Anne is asking, my broker said it's better to wait several days to be sure that they don't relist. But I think getting your name out is important. What do you think about that?
I agree with you, Anne. I don't wait until they relist, because I see that like that one or two few days window as my opportunity to get in front of them. Because if they do relist, and you didn't send them anything, now you can't contact them. But in that 1 to 2 or 3 day window that they didn't relist, at least if you get something in front of them that's attractive and nice looking and interesting, if they don't sell in that relisted period, they might call you. And I have several listings right now that I only mail them one thing. My first package, they relisted the very next day, but then 3, 6 months, whatever later, they expired again and they called me. So I think and that's why we're so speedy with everything. I look at the expireds first thing, 6 a.m. in the morning. That's when they show up on the system. My assistant starts on this first thing at 9 in the morning, getting them in the mail. We want it in the mail going to them, so they're getting it the very next day. And if they relist the next day, so be it. We stop sending to them, but at least they have something. And that's the other reason we have such a meaty package the first day. We're hoping it's something they might hold on to.
Question from Woody. Do you also look at released listings?
I look at anything where I'm legally or by the rules of my board allowed to. So different boards have different things. If it's canceled, where they no longer have an active listing in place, absolutely. If it's withdrawn, and these are just terminology for our board, if it's withdrawn, I can't, or temporarily off the market, I can't, because they still have, even if it's not on the MLS, they still have an active listing agreement in place. So you have to go with what's allowed by your board.
There's a question from Lisa, but I'm not sure if what she's referring to. What was the previous, more detailed 90-minute webinar that you did? I assume that this is last year's webinar?
Yeah, I think she's referring to that last year.
Yeah, you gave out the domain name, right? It's janieexpireds.info.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, the recording of this webinar, by the way, will be on YouTube. It takes a while to process it. Probably by the afternoon, you will get automatic emails from Webinar Jam, I think, about this. But I will also send out an email with the 2 links, last year's webinar and this one. Let's see. Yeah, do you know anything about Zillow-like in Canada? Elaine is asking. I don't know of any Zillow-like where they can get the temperature of the market.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that is something you can pull yourself. It's going to just be a lot more tedious because you're just basically trying to determine the months of inventory, meaning, a stable market, at least here in the US, a stable market is like 4 to 6 months inventory, meaning if no new homes came on the market, how many months would it take before all the current houses are sold? So a stable market's a 4 to 6 month market. Anything under 4 is a seller's market, meaning it's really hot and buyers are buying them up. The closer it gets down to 1 is hot, hot, hotter. Anything over 6 months is cool. And then the more months of inventory, it becomes cold. Luxury properties, just as a rule, we might have a 12-month market might be considered a stable market, and it's not considered cold until you're 12 months. And a lot higher percentage of luxury properties expire than bread and butter. So that was the other reason why I was saying you've got to jump on those lower mid-price properties because A, they just don't expire nearly as often because there's more buyers to buy them, and B, they relist a lot quicker. So depending on what your market is, you'll have to adjust your timing. And you could do that. I picked in my area by the data from my MLS that provides agents. I was able to pick like 6 or so top areas that we're focused on now. Whereas last year I was focused on, this is crazy, but last year I was sending stuff, I didn't even geographically know where they were. So I ended up getting things where I have to drive an hour or two that are in a cool market, whereas in my backyard was a hot market that I could get to in 3 minutes, but I didn't know. So looking back, I would do it differently. I don't entirely regret it because it allowed me to build up an inventory. And almost all of them, surprisingly, luxury ones, even the people who were kind of notorious relisters with new agents, meaning sellers that just kept finding new agents, almost everybody has either stayed with me or sold. Even the ones that I thought would be a challenge, they've stayed with me or sold. That's a whole separate webinar. That's more about client retention and seller communication and stuff like that. But it's worked.
Bruce has a question. What is in a first package that you send out?
It's a little bit of everything. It's a lot about, I feel your pain. I know you're frustrated. Talks about what we do differently, goes over our communication plan, goes over our marketing plan, got some good testimonials in there. The one thing I want to add in now, I haven't even had the time, is basically my case studies, like take all the listings I've sold in this last year and a half, and have them broke out, like I said, as a case study about analyzing, okay, it's almost like an autopsy. When the listing expires, you have to do an autopsy. Okay, why didn't it sell? And explain, what did I discover wasn't working? What did I change? And what were the results? Which is then, of course, a sold listing. And then a little bit about myself, my team, bio, stuff like that, a brokerage.
That would make a good video.
Yeah, we could do that.
And here's Lisa is asking, how long are they in your just listed, just sold program?
Until I get a postcard back return that the address is no longer good. Once they go in the just listed, just sold, whoever goes in that, they're getting postcards until they sell. If that's in 5 years, no problem. Like, I'm happy to get them in my system. That's just building me business. Like I said, from last May until now, I almost did no more prospecting because so much was happening. Because once I started to sell properties that had not sold by other people, like I said, a lot of times I was a second, third, or even fourth agent. I just started getting, neighbors would then call me to list, or friends would call me to list, or family members would call me to list, because they're like, oh, my sister, wasn't able to sell their property for 4 years and you sold it, So I keep, those people are just, those are seeds in the ground for future clients.
Well, I think we're past the hour here, and this was really a great webinar.
Oh, this has been awesome, Janie. You're so generous with what you do, and you're very transparent and open. And I hope those that attended the webinar will listen to a recording. Well, the lesson I got out of it, because I've been working as coaching real estate agents for a long time in marketing, and I hope they hear your persistence and that you're willing to do whatever needs to be done to implement systems to basically to serve those people. I really feel a dedication from what you're sharing, that you really want to help these people, and it's kind of like your outreach. Hey, I really want to help you move forward in your life by getting your property sold, and that persistence has helped you put together some systems that you're following, that you're deliberate to, and sounds like you're getting the help you need to help you invest in those systems, and you're willing to do it consistently and not looking for a result tomorrow.
It's definitely not a result tomorrow. The money's great, but I really do find so much satisfaction in helping these, like the lady who sold the old mansion. She's 92 years old. She was living in that house for the last 30 something years, 7,000 square foot house by herself. And she needed to sell it to be able to move into a nice assisted living facility, which I'm able to visit her this week.
So you build trust. You really, with a genuine desire in your heart, I know I can help these people. I'm the right person to help them. I have the systems in place that I can help them, and you don't give up until you do.
Yeah. So that, and then the other thing I really want to leave people with is, if you play small, you win small. If you play big and you have a big vision, you will win big. It's a risk reward thing. I mean, I'm telling you, last year was really hard for me. I was getting a ton of listings. They weren't selling. I was spending a lot of money to live, and I was spending a lot of money to market. I was doing it all by myself. I gained 30 pounds. It was a really hard year. And now, 20 months later, everything's really working out, because the listings marinated long enough that they started to sell, and the relationships solidified themselves enough. And then all of that started to springboard off. So I could have played it small and, had a bearable income, or a bearable, lifestyle, sustainable. I could have listened to what everybody else was saying. Oh, don't do this, don't do that, blah, 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 blah. But I chose very consciously to play big, to be all in, committed, all in, devoted. And I think that's my biggest message to tell people is, when you are that committed and you just don't give up no matter what happens, and you share your vision and you share your idea and your commitment to help people, it will come together. But you've got to play big. You've got to play, to win and to help people. It's all together.
That's awesome. Janie, thanks for taking the time to not only share what you know and what you've learned, but to inspire us as real estate agents to really put our systems in place. And thanks for sharing also about Realbird and the important part it plays in your marketing. I want to thank you again. We've recorded this webinar here today. Thank you, Janie, for your time. Thanks for everybody that participated in the webinar. Gosh, we had almost 200 people registered for this webinar here today, and there'll be many more that will experience in it because we will be sharing the link directly out to everybody once it's processed. But thanks again, Jamie, for your time, stepping out of your business, taking care of your clients to come help us out and learn how we can do the same.
Thank you,
very
guys.
much. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Have a great a couple of weeks. We'll be back together 2 weeks from this morning. And thank you very much.